On the Shrewd Dudes podcast, we have a special Tuesday live stream. I know we don't usually do Tuesday live streams. It's special. Come on, it's special. What else are we going to do? We got to commemorate this.
Yep.
Roe v. Wade has been overturned, and because of that, what the heck? We got some American guests with us to celebrate, to talk about it, to see what's happening moving forward. So, introducing our guests, top left-hand corner, we got Elijah Thompson of Dank Pro-Life Memes, of the Fetal Position podcast. He's been on the show before. It's been a long time, probably since 2020, which was also the last episode of the Fetal Position podcast. I just checked. I know. I'm basically your publicist now.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
And then
check is in the mail.
Yep. And then, of course, we have Jonathan Cantola, who is a semi-frequent guest on the show, and we always appreciate his commentary. And then, of course, we have Danny, and Danny's just Danny.
Oh, come on, man. Come on. You got to give me some love. None of this stuff.
I will give you nothing, and you will like it.
Oh, you know what?
So,
I refuse that offer. I refuse. Like Steven Crowder says, no.
Anyways, so today we're going to talk about a few different things. We're going to break down, first off, we're going to talk about why we are each individually pro-life. And while you each are doing that, I'm going to do some sharing and all that internet gobbledygook. Then we're going to talk about the left's response to Roe v. Wade being overturned. And then we're going to have a massive discussion about where do we go from here? Because, of course, this is the start of the battle. And we got to finish the war strong. And, of course, you guys are Americans. We're Canadians. So this hits us a little different. And this is the prelude to next week's discussion, which is with Canadian pro-life leaders, and to talk about where we go and to take the momentum that you guys took and try and get like an inch here in Canada, because we have nothing.
Yeah, good luck.
I know. Good luck to us. So, Elijah, why don't we start with you? What got you into the pro-life movement, and what makes you personally pro-life?
Okay, so in a galaxy far, far away, a long, long time ago, I was one of those apathetic pro-choice people who, if you would have asked me, like, how do you stand on abortion, I would have said, I don't know. I mean, I guess I probably wouldn't get an abortion myself, but you know, who am I to say it's that I should weigh in on other people's lives? At the time, I just also happened to be pretty much a moral relativist. I remember actually arguing in one of my early philosophy classes when I was in my undergrad, that we should never impose our cultural morals on any other culture. But that was pretty par for the course in terms of my other philosophy students that were in the same class. That was in, 2000, maybe 2008, maybe 2009-ish, somewhere around there. And then fast forward a little bit, I ended up changing my major from education because I didn't want to dedicate my life to teaching children who did not want to learn to, I changed it to biology. And then when I changed my major to biology, I had an opening because I had to go part-time because of all the way the labs worked out, that I declared a minor in philosophy. When I did that, I was just so happened to be learning a lot about biology and a lot about ethics simultaneously. So I was learning about human development, when human life begins, organismal development, different portions of like how over the course of our lives, how we change. And then at the same time as I was learning ethics and morality and figuring out where I stood on that, at the same time, too, I ended up kind of being pushed by a more atheist or at least secular type of philosopher, one of my professors, for me to explore kind of like my religious / metaphysical perspective. And at the time I was not religious. Turns out I essentially, to make a very long story short, became a Christian in college, which is usually not how it goes. And then
you broke the pattern.
I did.
Well, he's
I
one of the
ended
good
up breaking
ones.
it. So it was essentially a kind of like an obsession with apologetics that made me become a Christian. But totally separately from that, I mean, it was like simultaneous, but I didn't become pro-life because of anything the Bible said, because I knew almost nothing about the Bible at the time. I ended up learning more about biology and philosophy than I did about the Bible, because the Bible was like a separate, I wasn't learning anything in school on that. So I ended up learning about human development, learning that when a new human being comes into existence is after the process of conception is successfully completed. And then I learned about human rights and how over the course of time, anytime that we would define a human being as a non-person would always result in human like major atrocities, like, you know, massacring people, enslaving people, all that other stuff. And so I was like, well, I think that's bad. And I think all human beings, if they're human beings, have human rights. And at the time, I also was drifting away from my political apathy towards conservatism. And then I continued, and I'm a libertarian now. And so then I started looking into the non-aggression principle and where human rights come from. And I fell in love with like natural rights ideas, and that we are human, therefore we have rights, and the government is here to protect those rights, not give those rights. So all of this was happening in my early to mid 20s. And all of that pushed me from being an apathetic, moral relativist agnostic to a pro-life Christian, like I said, about different things, but and then being really passionate about apologetics types of stuff. And I got really into apologetics, and then I started drifting towards pro-life stuff. I listened to a podcast called Life Report, which I don't know if you guys know who Equal Rights Institute is. They're an organization run by a bunch of my, well, now Josh, I would consider to be one of my friends.
Cool.
At the time, his brother Tim was running it. They had Josh had a previous podcast that was called Life Report. It had 199 episodes, and they made a 200th episode, but it was a different format and different people, so I stopped listening. But at the time, it was like I was catching up to where they were, and so I hit 198, and they were like, "Oh, next episode's our last one." Then I hit 199, and I was like, "Okay." I just listened to all of these episodes, and I listened to a bunch of like episodes of like when Scott Klusendorf was on like apologetics radio shows and things like that. Like
Scotty's the man.
Yeah, he was on Stand to Reason's podcast, and I listened to that. I essentially couldn't get enough of the pro-life content, but I couldn't find any more. And I was like, who is out here making pro-life podcasts? And then it was like a knock from, you know, heaven, like, hey, dummy, you almost have a degree in biology. When you minored in philosophy, you just listened to thousands of hours of podcasts, and you've read like 4 books. You do one. So and I was like, all right, fine.
Wait. So you're saying that while most people get like, you know, some kind of a nice message from heaven or some kind of like, you know, like a amazing revelation, God basically McFly'd you.
He McFly'd you?
Like, hello, McFly.
Hello, dumb. You do it.
Hello. You do it.
Yeah, you do it, dummy. And so, yeah, I mean, I essentially was like, fine, I guess. And then so I started. That's when I was like trying to think of different names for a podcast, which is right before we started recording here. We talked about the fetal position. That name came to me literally in a dream. So
that's awesome.
I woke up and I was like, the fetal position, the fetal position. And my wife was like, what? And I was like, hang on. And I wrote it down in my phone. I was like, the fetal position. And I went right back to sleep. And then I woke up the next morning. I was like, because you know how when you write your dreams down, you're like, the next morning, you're like, this is incoherent. And so I looked at the next thing. I was like, the fetal position podcast. What a great idea. And then so I made a bunch of probably like 10 or 15 episodes of that. And then realized that a lot of people don't like long form podcasts. And so I wanted to get the message out even more. And so I ended up making a page that is now known as Dank Pro-Life Memes. I was a little bit ashamed of it because I didn't like memes at the time. I mean, I thought they were funny, but I didn't like the way that our culture was trending towards meme culture and just bumper sticker sloganeering and stuff. And I was like, but the memes suck for pro-life stuff. Like pro-choice memes are all right, I guess, but pro-life memes don't really exist. And there was one that was kind of funny that I was like, this is actually kind of nice. It was the one where the astronauts on Mars were like, hey, I found these fetuses. And it's like, yeah, but are they alive? I was like, this is funny. And so I ended up creating dank pro-life memes because back in 2017, dank was actually a word that was in style. Not so much anymore, really.
Like that kind of aged quickly, showing your age, eh?
Yeah.
It
But you know, I every once in a while I'll think about changing my name, but then everybody's like, why? And I'm like, never mind, I won't do it.
Yeah, okay.
And so I ended up starting dank pro-life memes, and what my plan was originally to put like podcast episodes attached to it. so that people would be like, oh, I like this meme. Oh, look at, there's a podcast related to it.
The one.
Turns out I pretty much ran out of podcast content like around episode 440 or something like that. I didn't run out of it, but as you guys know, it takes a lot of effort to put together a podcast. Like, it's not just sitting down and talking to your phone or whatever.
Mhm.
There's a lot to it. And I mean, at the time, so I have a 4-year-old. Sorry, what was that?
It's like, we want some bloody respect here, man.
Yeah, exactly. I respect you guys.
Amen, brother. Amen.
So now I have a 4-year-old, a 6-year-old, and an 8-year-old, and so I had it was small children. I was trying to work full time. All these other things were happening, and so I was like, I just can't dedicate the time for a podcast. And so, creating memes is much easier because all you have to do is find something funny and then do some quick editing on your phone, and then type something funny or look on Twitter and take a screenshot and post it.
Yeah.
And that was in 2017.
Yep.
And 2017, maybe halfway through 2017, I went from like 300 followers to like over 1,000 in like a week or something. And then it just rocketed up from there. And I was like, I need to get on Twitter and Facebook and MeWe, or Twitter and Instagram and MeWe and Reddit. And
MeWe. Very few people I know have heard of MeWe, but it's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
If you look for Dank Pro Life memes on pretty much any social media platform that exists, you will find it. I probably am not posting on it, but you'll still find it. Not that Donald Trump one.
The Truth Social?
Truth Social, because it doesn't have an app for anything but iPhone. So
yeah.
Really?
Yeah, they're still like developing it, so.
Still starting.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like once it has it, I'll probably just download it just for the sake of it. But but anyway, so now I essentially just make memes, and because of that, I was able to kind of work the nuance that I brought to the podcast. I was able to work it into at least some of the memes that I post. I usually will try to like not use words inaccurately, like if abortion is illegal somewhere, like I live in New York, and so abortion is legal here, and so like I can't technically use the term murder.
Yeah.
Wow, you live.
This is actually really cool though, because tell me about it. This is actually really cool though, because this is the first time that I've had to, in my mind, think, what state do I live in?
Yep.
This state, it is illegal. It is legal here, but like if I was in a different one, it would have been illegal.
If you were living where our other guest, where Jonathan lives, Jonathan, how are your abortion laws?
Pretty daggum good.
Where do you live?
Depends on
Oklahoma.
What side you're on.
Oh
wow! Did they ban it immediately?
I think they outright banned it, with the exception of rape and incest. Okay. I think are the only two exceptions that they've given.
You guys had a trigger law, right?
What's that?
You guys had a trigger law?
No, I don't think we do.
Oh,
so okay, I'm just reading off of CNET right now. Post Roe in Oklahoma, anyone who performs an abortion at any point after fertilization could be subject to up to 2 to 5 years in prison unless the life of the mother is at risk. A trigger law goes into effect on August 26. That increases the penalty to 10 years in prison and a fine of $100,000. The statute makes exceptions for miscarriages.
Oklahoma.
Exactly. To save the life of the patient.
Opposite of New York.
Yeah.
It is about the only good thing that the governor of this state has done, so don't get too hype.
Don't get too hype.
Credit where credit is due, man.
Yep. And then, of course, here in Canada, we're even worse than New York.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because you guys have no abortion laws,
right? We have no abortion law, and then we pay for it.
Yep.
Because it's for it's tax dollars.
Well,
right.
Not only do we have no limitations of any kind. You can literally walk into, if you go through the procedure, you can literally get an abortion right up to like the days before the baby's born, and they'll do it.
Yep.
I mean, not super easy to find person, but
you as long as you can. And like there was a story from a few years ago in Montreal, and there was a woman who was trying to get an abortion at 34 weeks. And she went from hospital to hospital because they kept turning her down. And then eventually she procured one from, I think, like the university hospital. And then she went and had like this long protest campaign where she went to the Montreal City Hall and she went to the Quebec legislature about how it was such a struggle to find an abortion at 34 weeks, and that the government of Quebec needs to make it easier at 34 weeks. And we're all like,
whoa,
no, we don't.
We get
no.
a child, baby killing murderer to take care of my baby.
Exactly.
It's crazy. But they go beyond that. They have, like, I think here in Calgary, the city we live in, they passed a law here that you are not allowed to do any kind of pro-life advocacy within like 150 feet of schools.
Well, yeah, you're not allowed to have. You can do advocacy, but you can't have signage.
There's some serious limitations.
You can stand there without signs.
Yeah, you have to be small enough to be a brochure.
Yeah,
That's it.
it's basically like a pamphlet that you hand out, and it's like.
Can you stand there with like 7 signs that have like PROLIFE?
You know what? We're going to suggest it because that would be
it's a good idea.
It really would.
Right.
If each one of you guys, there's 7 of you there, just holding up one sign.
Yep.
Take that, Trudeau.
Exactly.
Take that.
All right. Well, Jonathan, we've kind of let you be for now. Why are you personally pro-life, and how did you join kind of this whole thing?
So kind of like most people, when I was younger, I was pretty pro-choice. I was like, it's not my business. If you want to go do that, go do that. I'm not going to do it, but who am I to tell you what to do? And as I kind of got older, I realized that it was less and less about if they need the abortion and more about wanting to just get the abortion. It became more about the ability to kill something rather than the ability to fix a problem that you may have had. So I kind of slowly started doing research and realizing that some of the laws were really hypocritical if pro-choice people are correct and it's just a clump of cells. But if my girlfriend got pregnant and I punched her in the stomach and then stabbed her in the face, it would be double murder.
Yes.
Because it would be murdering the baby and the person. But if you go and have somebody vacuum out the supposed clump of cells, it's not murder, it's healthcare. And once I started realizing the double standard and the hypocrisy, it kind of pushed me further and further to realize that they're crazy. People on that side are just crazy. They're a little bit unhinged, and I don't want to be associated with unhinged. That's why I'm not far right. That's why I don't believe in the neo-Nazis and the KKK. I don't want to be associated with extreme crazy. So I had to choose the route of common sense.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the same people that will sit and tell me that the baby is not a baby, even though science proves that at conception a new life is produced. But then want to sit and tell me that a man can get pregnant and a man can have a period and a man needs abortion rights. So very crazy, very unhinged, and they pretty much did it to themselves. Yeah,
it's like we have the magical powers to transform ourselves into whatever gender we want. It's like magic.
Yeah, I mean, I could come out tomorrow and say I'm a guy. The next day I could be a girl.
Mascara and bam.
Yeah. I don't even have to shave, and that's the cool part about genders. I don't even have to shave. I could leave the beard and still be a woman, and I can get pregnant and have periods. I just don't get maternity leave.
Like that guy on the Dr. Phil with Matt Walsh. Remember?
Yeah.
Long hair, big old beard.
Big old just
it's like
going down.
Aren't I convincing?
Really weird, messed up.
No, you butt ugly. Sorry.
I've noticed that the vast majority of pro-choice women are women that probably don't ever have to make that choice.
There is an epidemic of some very unappealing types over there.
Very.
But Johnny, so it's interesting that you came around to the I guess the pro-life side because you're a thinking man. And
it's common sense.
Yeah, it's like Dennis Prager was on the Tim Pool's IRL. I think it was like a week and a half ago, And he basically said that like what makes somebody a conservative is like their willingness to engage honestly and to really think things through. Because he's like that's the one feature that seems to separate the lunatic left from everybody else. It's like if you're a thinking person who thinks reasonably and rationally, you're a conservative. That's essentially what defines conservatives now, is that you actually think things through. You don't just accept talking points like nilly-willy as they come your way, right?
Yeah, and that's the downfall of culture today, is everything, kind of like Elijah was saying, everything's kind of meme culture and just kind of, narrative talking points, and nobody, I've found just since the Roe v. Wade overturn that nobody knows how to have just a basic debate.
Yes.
They either jump right to insults or they shut down. There's no civil discourse at all anymore in today's society, at least here. It's out of hand that I can't state my opinion and justify my position without you calling me a racist, a bigot, a homophobe, a transphobe,
whatever else.
I mean, yeah, they're making up words to call people now. So
that's right. I find it amazing that my buddy and I were talking about this on the we were working today, and we were listening to a podcast, and they're like addressing really, really bad arguments from pro-choice. One of the arguments was like, oh, there's like in a like a nut like from almond tree. It's like that's not a real tree. That's a potential tree. And we were talking about that. I'm like, you have to be really stupid to believe that, because you literally have to turn off your brain and be like, well, that sounds good from my position, so I'm going to accept it blindly because it sounds good. But they never actually do the hard work of thinking it through, and that's a very easy thing to debunk if you just take the time. And I think like really quick question for Elijah. So Elijah, you do basically memes, and one of the problems I find right now is memes are kind of like the way that the left tends to push information. Hey, like here's a quick little thing, and in 2 seconds I've pretty much given you a talking point that you'll repeat ad nauseum. Do you find that is equally as effective in the pro-life side, using memes to kind of like share information, or do you find them to be a bad resource? What's your view on memes in general?
I guess it depends on what you mean by effective. Is it effective at getting a message out there really quickly? For sure. Is it effective at kind of like kicking the hornet's nest? Yeah, also that, yes. This is kind of, I don't know, maybe this is just me potentially overthinking one of the main things I do, but my memes are interesting because you have to be as short and as quick and as witty as you possibly can in order to be like a successful meme, at least within like the political right leaning things. Like people on the left, they apparently can write massive paragraphs and it doesn't matter because whatever. So with memes, I guess my philosophy of memes is that I don't want to ever be saying anything potentially inaccurate. Like I mentioned earlier, potentially using the word murder, if it doesn't apply, could potentially be inaccurate. And just because there's a legal and illegal aspect to it there. I mean, yeah, I understand that it's morally murder. Like I'm 100% on board with that. But just because what you end up finding is that if you say it's murder, then people want to debate you on the semantics of the term murder and how it relates to things like that. And so I tend to avoid those kind of things. I have come to the point where so much of my pro-life advocacy, specifically on the meme page, I have like really consolidated how I want things to be phrased. And so when I see other people phrasing things in different ways, I'm just like, I know what they're going to pick apart there. So like for example, the phrase life begins at conception, literally every one of those statements, every one of those words is potentially misunderstood. And so what I will say, and even though this is a little bit more than life begins at conception, is I will say a new human organism begins to develop when the process of conception is successful completed.
Ooh, that is.
And we could potentially go. we
There
could
you have
potentially
a
go through all of
biologist.
those things. Yeah, right.
He's practiced in
So-
front of the mirror like for hours.
I
Yeah,
am ready for
I
this.
won't get this every single time.
I actually had it to a point where it's if I were to say a new in my phone, I could just hit the middle button. A new human organism begins to develop when the process of conception is successfully completed. Like it would auto complete the entire sentence every time I try to type it out. But so I guess to get to your question is like the success of memes. Like, yes, it is successful if the goal is to get a particular message out there. But I have found that not a lot of memes work well in being persuasive for people outside of the I guess to use a negative term, outside of the echo chamber that we already exist in. A lot of my role as the meme person is to make memes that make people who go out there and talk all day and do the sidewalk counseling and create the content that's persuasive and look at data and look at research and do all the science and things like that. My job is like, kind of like the court jester, where like they come in, they can be amused, they can share stuff. It's like a rallying cry for our side. But if I am actually talking to somebody in real life, the moment I use one of my catchphrases, don't like back alley abortions, don't get one. Like maybe that's not going to be as effective if we're talking to actual people in real life. And I've noticed this recently. Almost everybody who's pro-choice has by now unfriended me or unfollowed me on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram.
Yeah.
But a lot of people are still hanging out because I don't actually post that much on my personal Facebook page about this issue. Because a lot of my need to post it is put on the meme page, and so I don't really have to say much. And so recently I've had a couple conversations with friends and family about the issue, and I'm so used to engaging in meme warfare that I'm like, oh wait. I actually know this person, or like, I might actually see this person for Thanksgiving.
Hold back the monster.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You're like the
And
Hulk.
I actually,
You're trying not to get angry, or else you'll rip off your shirt.
but the trick is that I'm always angry.
That's right. Babies.
Elijah the Hulk.
Babies.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess as long as people are using memes in a way that is not intended to be the only form of conversation or the only form of advocacy, fine. You know, if the plan is to just kind of have something to make your side laugh, stuff like that, cool. Unfortunately, it is, I think most of the time, a lot of people, especially on social media, are just about that's the only thing that they're doing. And I think right now it's going for, like, I've seen a recent shift where pro-lifers have gone for, I think maybe last 2 years or so, where pro-lifers have gone from being not overly defensive, but they've been defensive in an appropriate way, kind of like trying to justify their views on certain things. And recently in the last 2 years, we've gone from doing that to being based, where like if you say a woman goes to jail for aborting a baby with the morning after pill, then everybody's like based, and then everybody's like yeah, and everybody's and I'm like this, like what is happening right now? But like I'm here as the guy kind of giving the ammo for that, and it feels weird. So that's why I use my opportunity to the platform that I have and the meme creation ability that I have to be able to make sure I'm making nuanced arguments that are not potentially wrong. So that way, if people do get into arguments with their friends and family on Facebook, at least I'm not giving them blanks to fire.
Yeah, no, that's
Hashtag Alec Baldwin.
I love the point you made because I think you're very right. Memes are very effective for your own side, for your own, basically, like in the left, this works for the left and the right, because what they do is they share all these memes and then they get likes and everyone's like, yeah, you see, yeah, and they all agree. So really what you're doing with memes, you're preaching to the choir. And so they do seem to have a value in themselves. And like, like I share a meme, usually particularly one that's pro-life or something like that. I share it to my friends and everyone's like, yeah, that's really funny. And they really appreciate it. It's a way of kind of connecting with your base. But doesn't seem to be very effective as a way of debunking other people out of their views, even though the left I found a lot of people I talked to on the left who are pro-abortions, like advocates. A lot of them will actually just send a meme instead of making an argument.
Mhm.
They think that actually
Someone
makes their
just did that to me today. I was having a reasonable conversation with them, and it was like, "Why don't you stop caring about the unborn in the same way that you don't care about the children in foster care?" I'm like we were having a good conversation, and then you just memed me.
Yeah.
Like, what the?
Mhm.
Mhm.
And it's a very dishonest way of engaging.
It
Making
is.
a conversation, then you don't. Like Stephen, do I have time to ask Johnny one more question?
One more question, and then
No
we
problem.
actually do have to get into the
So,
substance.
so I want to ask Johnny here, really quick question. I find it very difficult to engage with the left, particularly with pro-choicers. I find that they're very intellectually dishonest, and that they, like you said, they resort to a lot of ad hominems or maybe like diversion. They never answer. They never provide evidence. Do you find what's your approach to debating with people who are outside of the pro-life camp? Do you have one? Like, what's your approach?
My approach is strictly factual and statistical. I very rarely, unless it's brought up by them, do I bring any kind of personal experiences into a conversation or a debate or an argument, which is ultimately what it devolves into. And I try and pick everything that they say, because most of them won't state more than 4 or 5 talking points at a time, because I don't think most of them know how to count characters. And so I will.
Quick question: is that called dumping? I've heard somebody say it's a fallacy where you throw a ton of like objections without the intent of actually
Galloping.
answering. What's it called?
Yeah.
I believe they call it gish galloping. At least they did in the apologetic circles.
Okay,
Yeah, Gish is named after this guy named Dwayne Gish, who would do the same thing.
Oh, so
Things I've
basically
never heard
they
of,
throw out
okay.
a million objections, but they're only meant to muddy the waters, not to be honest. I just wanted to make sure I got that right. So sorry, John.
What they do with that is the way that they figure in their head is that if they throw 15 different scenarios and arguments out there, you're only going to pick one, and then they can go back afterwards and say, but you didn't say anything about this, you didn't deny this, you didn't rebut this. And that makes the person who did the rebutting look less credible.
Yes.
And so that's what they do. I will literally, my wife just sat and watched me do it the other morning. I woke up and somebody had responded to a comment I had made on a CNN article. And it was like 15 lines of 15 different things. And I went through and said, okay, first, and I would read what they said and respond. Go down to the next line, read their next line, respond. That way they couldn't say, but you didn't say this, or you didn't answer this, or you didn't respond to this. And it shuts a lot of that down, because once you make them look stupid on every point that they made, they have nothing to go to. The girl that I was arguing with, just resorted back to saying the same things over and over in different wordings, trying to get me to slip up on what I was saying. But it's really, you just basically got to stay factual and statistical. And I have probably 15 pages on my phone of where I'm going to pull statistics from.
Oh,
And that way, as soon as I say a statistic like rape and incest is less than 0.5% of the reason for abortions, I can link it. Boom, you're going to see it. And if you don't read it, that's your business. But I put it there, and I don't argue for the person I'm arguing with, because most people aren't going to change their mind.
No,
Statistically, people do not change their mind, especially on real hot button issues like guns, abortions, voting regulations, First Amendment speech. They're not going to change their mind. But the 50, 100, 200 people going back and reading through the comments might change their mind. And that's what I look for. I look to change the readers later on minds more so than the idiot I'm arguing with.
Nice.
Okay. All right.
I love how you and I are like so like. I thought I was the only fool who had like pages and pages of like information. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
thought it was just
Okay.
crazy.
So
But-
before we actually go into everything, I just had a quick question for Elijah.
Sure.
Because I was going through things and I'm like going through Twitter because I'm like, ooh, we have people watching on Twitter, which has never happened before because people don't
nice.
watch live
Went
streams
back
on
and
Twitter.
retweeted everything.
I know.
That's right.
And I was
Fire away.
thinking about it, and then I was like, okay, like going through it, I'm like, oh, like maybe I'll follow a few people that are follow on Dick Play like memes, and then I'm like, I see this one person, and I'm like, oh, I remember this person, Derek.
Pixel protectors?
Yes,
Yes.
Pixel Protectors, and I go way back.
Oh,
like-
really?
Oh, like
Yeah.
because I had a Twitter page ages ago that got taken down, and I forget exactly what it was called. I had like a few thousand followers, and then like there was enough reporting that it got taken down, and I'm like, oh, that's poor. But he and I were just like, oh, we were so tight. It was so great. And then I'm like, is that the same guy? It's the same guy. Okay.
Yeah, we're secret homosexual lovers.
All right. Got the bromance going.
Got
I
the
like
bromance
it.
going. Yeah, I would love to connect with him because it's been so long.
I bet you. I mean, he's a cool guy.
Yeah, I'll send him a message.
You should reach out again.
Yeah, I will. Okay.
All right, Elijah. I'm gonna send Elijah a bromance video later after the show. It'll be good.
Yeah.
Okay. So
I do have safety on my Wi-Fi at home just in case
Very important. Very
anything
important.
nasty happens.
all right, let's keep it PG here.
All right, let's go.
Anyways, so we do have a few things which we're going to be talking about. First thing Danny wanted to go over, and you can kind of do the intro on this, so I'll just share my screen here on Discord, and everybody can see it.
Mhm.
And then hopefully if I go full screen, then everybody can see this.
Okay.
That should be working. Okay, so Danny, you want to go over that? About
so
your basic argument for pro-life?
the moral argument against abortion. So I got this idea. I threw this idea from Scott Wissendorf, who of course we all love, and he is the absolute godfather of the pro-life movement. He is the big daddy of it. Now, his basic argument, he says he whittled it down to like one sentence, like it is wrong to intentionally kill an innocent human life, and like he basically tried to like whittle it down. Now, what the moral argument essentially what I try to do in this argument is I basically try to bring it down to a deductive reasoning argument. This is very common in the Kalam cosmological argument. It like takes this form where basically you make a series of premises, and if every premise is true from the first to the last, then the entire thing stands and falls upon this. So basically, here's how I phrased it, and this is basically the moral argument for abortion. Premise number one against abortion. Thank you. Against abortion. So premise one: it is wrong to intentionally kill an innocent human being. Premise two: the preborn are human. Premise three: the preborn are alive. Premise four: the preborn are innocent. Premise five: the preborn have inherent worth. Premise 6, abortion intentionally kills the preborn. Premise 7, therefore, abortion is wrong. So, I created this based on like Scott Klusendorf's arguments. I wanted to find out if you guys believe that this is a solid pro-life case or like argument. And if you think that if you see any flaws, or do you think it's solid? And I want to.
I have a couple thoughts.
Sure, go for it, Elijah.
So I like the first premise. It is wrong to intentionally kill an innocent human being. But then, so P2 preborn are human. Yep, got it. Preborn are alive. It's actually not necessary. Yeah. Because it doesn't say it is wrong to intentionally kill an alive innocent human being. Yeah. I don't know if it's necessary. Maybe you mean.
I think it's necessary.
It might be there for the word kill.
In order to define kill, you have to basically say
to be
that
something that is alive.
Because you can have a human inside you that's dead, like there's like miscarried or children that didn't make it. Then it's not wrong to kill them, as long as it's alive.
Sure. Well,
then it's killing.
Then you wouldn't be killing them by definition.
Exactly.
Like they're already dead.
That's why I felt it was
so. I mean,
alive.
Yeah, I can see where you're going with that. I do. So then P4, you have innocent, which is in a part of P1, and then you have preborn have inherent worth. I don't know if
Yes.
that one is necessary, because
No.
that I think is front loaded potentially in the phrase human being.
Okay. Yeah. So it
so
it plays on the idea of the being, because one of the things that a lot of pro-choice people will always say is that, okay, it's human, but it doesn't. But then they add a condition. Oh, but it doesn't have consciousness. Oh, or it can't. It's not viable outside of the womb. Or like they add those additional conditions. And the reason why I put premise 5 is the idea that because it's human and because it's a human being, it automatically has inherent worth. Is that the idea? Is that
I'm with you on that. It's just it there seems like there needs to be another, probably a secondary argument to potentially say that all human beings have inherent worth. Something, yeah. It looks like you're kind of taking something and putting something where it doesn't necessarily need to be.
okay?
Yeah, I don't know. This is just toss an idea. So then the last one, abortion intentionally kills a preborn, which that makes sense. I guess for me, I have this constant tension between making things brief enough to be able to be conveyed quickly and making things accurate enough so that not to be incorrect. So like
misconstrued.
Right. And so nothing here I think is necessarily wrong. It just feels like it's going to be, you're going to be like, I don't even know if this is tweetable. Is this tweetable? Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's a picture, so you can tweet this if you like.
Well,
yeah, that's fair.
well, yeah.
You can tweet that. But
Knock
I mean, like
yourself
the text
out,
itself,
bro.
Yeah, the text itself, I don't know.
It's a lot.
Yeah, I mean,
like it's a big chunk of text.
Yes.
This would be something that I think if you wanted to give this to somebody who is pro-choice, you could say, hey, here are the details of this. Do you want to talk about this? Which one in particular do you disagree with? I think that would be this is a great way to start off that kind of a conversation.
It's basically a meme that establishes a foundation upon which to have that conversation. Here is my basis for why I think abortion is wrong. Tell me where please show me where I am wrong, where I'm missing.
Yeah, and I would align definitely with Elijah, where like this, it's not necessarily a meme, but it's definitely like once you have somebody's attention, then it'd be like this little pamphlet. It's like, where did I go wrong on this? And then we can have a discussion and break away from there. Whereas like a meme, and I've made a couple memes, and Danny, you've made a couple memes, and Elijah is the king of all memes.
The king of memes, all hail.
All hail. But you want a meme to be, of course, quick and concise, and you want it to be addressing the point immediately, because if it has too much text, then it's like, oh, well, that seems really kind of boring. So I'm just gonna like it's the problem of our kind of entitlement, and everything has to be the next quick thing to gain our attention. In that even like 100 words. Well, this isn't even 100 words. This is probably 40 words. Yep. And that's too much for our modern day society. And it shows how detrimental our culture has fallen. The detriment.
People lose interest really quickly.
Yes.
They lose interest. Most people are going to lose interest after the first premise.
Sure.
After premise 1, they're going to lose interest.
Yeah.
This reminds me of literally a change my mind. That's what that reminds me of. That you put that out there and say, feel free to change my mind.
Which someday, Danny, I know we've talked about it in the past. I do want to do some sort of a change my mind here in Calgary.
I would be all down for that, bro.
Because that'd be. We're prepared.
Yeah. Yeah. The idea with this one is, if you look at draws from the Kalam cosmological argument. For God's existence, which is basically like an academic premise of like if you want to show that God exists, use deductive reasoning. So this would not be a thing that you would use on online forums, but it may be something that you use with somebody that you're having an intellectual discussion with, and be like, here is the reasons why I think abortion is wrong. Can you point out where I'm mistaken? And it's a launching point and also a foundation from which you can you can basically say, like, if my logic is sound, then how can I be wrong?
Yes.
That's the essential
Okay.
approach.
All right.
Right.
Now, of course, we all love to talk, but we do
What?
need to move on to other things, even just for a little bit.
Craziness.
With how it is on Discord, it's going to be a little difficult for people to see.
Mhm.
Dang it. Sometimes my mouse just disappears. So if you're watching, as soon as I exit the page. So I'm going to link this page later on, and it's going to talk about the abortion laws in all the states, and you can kind of check it out. But unfortunately, because I'm streaming off of my Discord page, as soon as I leave, nobody else can see. So that's really unfortunate for everybody else. But we are going to watch some videos of the left's reaction to Roe v. Wade. Because that's just entertaining. Yeah, entertaining.
Are you not entertained?
And are you not entertained? Exactly. So we're going to watch two separate videos. One is a compilation that I clipped from somewhere else. And then another is a clip from CNN. And we're going to kind of have a reaction to that one because that one's just really dark.
All right, sure, man.
So let's just go into that.
Get angry! This is atrocious! This is war on women! How dare the Supreme Court do this? You, Kavanaugh! You, Gorsuch, for lying under oath when you were confirmed, saying that you believe that this was settled! Women will die! But as long as it fits your Christian God narrative, it must be correct!
Oh, Stephen, real quick.
Yep.
And all the human rights are going to start.
You're saying that it can't be watched?
It can't be seen on the live stream, just so you know.
Okay. All right. I can fix that. Just give me 1 second.
Yeah, because I'm following the live stream, and it's not showing up on the live stream. There you go. Now I can see it. Wait,
All right.
hold on.
I'm just going to a different. You see all of my inner workings.
Good old technology.
I know. Don't know why it does that to me. There we go. Okay. So that'll work.
Okay, go for it.
Falling down. Alright, LGBTQ plus community, we're next on the chopping block. And birth control. And possibly interracial marriage. So pretty much we're going...
Making stuff up.
The only thing that's going to have rights in this country is white men and guns.
This is about the woman who tried to have a baby so bad and ended up having a miscarriage, who now has to go stand on trial. If we don't stand up now and do something about this, The Handmaid's Tale is going to be more than just a show. And I am sick. How do I look at my daughters and tell them that they're growing up in an amazing place when they're not?
I love to travel and spend money. Like, I love to spend money. But if you are a red state and you have anti-abortion laws, not only will I not visit your state and not spend my money there, but I will also not be sending my children there to college, and they will not be spending any money there either.
Good.
I think that if you can leave the country, you should. I think if you're of childbearing age and you can leave the country, you should.
Yeah.
That has to be satire.
Nope.
These are grown people.
These are grown people?
Now, hold on. She makes a valid point. I just couldn't really make it out.
You just don't get it?
I just couldn't really decipher through the agonizing, guttural screaming.
Okay, and then this is the second video, which is just really, really diabolically evil.
I am not anybody to tell you what you need to do with your life or with your uterus. And because I have a family with a lot of special needs kids, I have a brother who's 57 and has the mental and motor skills of a 1-year-old. And I know what that means financially, emotionally, physically for a family. And I know not all families can do it. And I have a step-granddaughter who was born with Down syndrome. And you know what? It is very difficult in Florida to get services. It is not as easy as it sounds on paper. And I've got another step-grandson who is very autistic, who has autism, and it is incredible. And their mothers and people who are in that society, who are in that community, will tell you that they considered suicide because that's how difficult it is to get help, because that's how lonely they feel, because they can't get other jobs, because they have financial issues, because the care that they're able to give their other children suffers.
The Supreme Court's rule.
Yeah.
She sounds
tell me that disabled people deserve to die.
Oh,
That's
I know.
what that woman just
That
said.
is what she just said.
That's insane.
She basically said that because there's a potential that a disabled child will be hurt throughout their life, that it will be difficult for them to do certain things, that you should just murder them. Not give them a chance, not give them a shot, not give them an opportunity, just kill them.
Kill
and that kind of thinking is really, really dangerous because, like, you know, like what's stopping them from killing them now? Like, really, what's stopping them? They're like, oh, they're suffering. Because they still hold on to this like moral a view that like, oh, we can't kill them now because, you know, it's not socially acceptable yet to say that. But, you know, if it ever became like, you know, actually possible, like, you know, we don't know. Like, this is the kind of thing that leads to that kind of slippery slope where if you make it okay to kill children because they're disabled and they're going to have a bad life, then there's only a matter of time before you're going to completely undo any protections for people who are fully grown and and have things. This is how you.
Well, at some point, you got to stop cherry picking and saying, well, it's okay to kill them now, but you can't kill them later. Well, if that's the case, then you got to start making all murder legal, because what's the difference in killing a baby 10 minutes from being pregnant and 10 minutes after having the baby and a 25-year-old that you get into an argument with out at the grocery store? You can't cherry pick what laws and what moralities you want to follow for that day. Just like with the drugs argument. Well, you want to make marijuana legal. Okay, well, what's the difference in marijuana and heroin at that point? You can't cherry pick just one drug. They're all drugs.
In Canada, it's already making it legal. I don't know if you heard
Yeah.
BC. In the province of BC, Trudeau basically said that they're not going to prosecute hard drug offenses.
Yeah.
Well, that's like Oregon and Washington did it this last election. They completely made every drug just okay. You could shoot up heroin out in the front yard and the crosswalks.
Don't worry, Johnny. Nothing bad could ever happen.
And then their heroin overdoses tripled in the last year.
Good luck.
So fantastic.
On conspiracy theorists. My goodness.
Yeah. Just pushing things willy-nilly. No.
Yeah, no, not at all.
No, this
what
is.
What do you guys think of the other ladies that?
Oh my goodness.
The previous video.
The freakouts, like
the freakouts. So
everybody saw this coming. Be like, you knew that us pro-lifers, we were gonna have them like. There was gonna be a day where we're all like, woo, and then it'd be like, all right, to work. And then with pro-abortees, with pro-choicers, it was, okay, life is over.
It's all over.
And it's just going to be, that's going to be how they feel going forward. And of course, the reactions, which I didn't show, because those kind of reactions might get you suspended off of YouTube and other platforms, were full out calling for terrorism and violence and to blow up the Supreme Court and to burn down their houses. There was a TikTok post where it went through the addresses of each Supreme Court justice, and the most liked comment on TikTok is, "This is how you make a pipe bomb."
Yep.
But these are the same people, Stephen.
Oh yes, These are the non-extremists.
These are the compassionate people who show their they take their compassion, write it on a piece of paper, wrap it on a brick, and throw it through the window of the Supreme Court. You know, that's how they throw their compassion.
Make sure you have good shoes there, Elijah.
It's about aerodynamics.
Fiery but mostly peaceful protests. Volume 2 coming soon.
Yeah. Explosive but mostly peaceful.
Near you.
The summer of angsty love is going to be the summer.
Yeah.
It's going to be back. Going to bring it back.
I particularly like the one who said she wasn't going to travel to any of the red states.
You're like, okay,
I'm ecstatic. I'm ecstatic that she's not going to come to my state and she's not going to send her child to college in my state because I think the colleges in my state suck anyway. So
somebody made a great point about that. I want to you guys think this is like a real problem in the States where right now, so for example, Texas is getting a ton of like California residents are coming to Texas and they're like, oh, let's flee the horrors of California and their bad laws and all that. But then they're trying to turn Texas blue, right? And some people are saying like, well, actually, if you make pro-life laws like very strong in these like conservative states, they're going to be fleeing like rats leaving like the ship. They're going to be like
exactly,
running to their blue states. It's like, well, that's kind of a nice balance. You're solving the problem.
The purple states, are going to turn red really quickly because the pro-choice people are now, if they will pass stricter abortion laws, they will flee to nearby blue states where they can, kill their baby after it's born and been bottle fed for a month.
And they can one of those like little like 10 you get a free
it's like a little punch card. After the 10th one you get one free.
Like hey, you've earned
so
this,
dark.
Man.
So dark.
It's like dark pro-life.
All right.
Here.
So there was actually another 2 articles which I was going to go over.
Go for it.
And so this is they're like, well, we don't want to freak out, so let's have rational arguments. Present rational discussions on how we're going to deal with pro-lifers. And so this is what they came up with. And I'm going to say right now, it's a little loony.
That's always an understatement.
Yeah, it's more than just an understatement. So, from Unilad, American women are going to go on a sex strike after abortion rights were overturned. Women in the United States have shown their support for a sex strike after the Supreme Court overturned the historic Roe v. Wade. Thousands of people across the country launched protests after the court voted in favor of a Mississippi law. Activists took to the streets, gathered outside the home of conservative Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, all hail his name, and slammed the decision on social media.
Praise be unto him.
I know, where the term abstinence began trending following the Supreme Court's decision. Hey ladies, with the new recent Roe v. Wade decision, I think it's time we all practice abstinence, especially our lovely ladies who are married to the Supreme Court justices, senators, etc. No sex at all. We wouldn't want to risk anything. Let's see how long they last.
Yeah, like the
ironically enough, that is most pro-life's argument.
I know.
Is abstinence. If you don't want pregnancy, instead of getting pregnant and killing the baby, just choose abstinence.
Just, wait for someone else. Because, like, well, Danny outside, we have either been married or are married, and the women which we are married to agree with us.
That's generally how you date. Is you date somebody who believes in similar things to you. So, you know what? I support this decision by pro-choice women.
I think this is okay. Now I think this actually works because one of the things I've heard a lot is that the left doesn't understand the right's views or positions. They constantly misrepresent what we actually believe. They think that, we want to control women. It's like you've met a pro-lifer who actually that's his like ultimate like evil secret plan. He wants to control women. Like, we've. But really, like the thing is, I don't know if you've heard this. The idea of leftist white progressive women that basically they're dominant and they're alphas. And they always they tend to marry those beta males. The ones that are like, yes, honey. Yes, yes, honey. So I actually do think that this may be part of that world where they're used to this is how they normally dominate their men. It's like, well, unless you do what I want, there's going to be some serious punishments. And all that. So I'm like, I think that this is how they think the world works.
Yep.
They think, well, this is how I dominate my man. This is how I control my man. So, this will work perfectly with the conservatives. It's like, except the conservatives like, hard pass.
Yep.
I think that's how we work. I don't know if you guys agree with that. That's my theory. Call it a conspiracy theory if you want, but I think I'm
Elijah. Last comment before we move on to the next article.
I just think it's interesting because like the entire time that we've been talking to them before all this happened, they were under the impression, or at least they were telling people that they were under the impression that abstinence is impossible.
Yes.
You can never make abstinence work. How dare you teach anybody abstinence? The goal is to give birth control and comprehensive sex ed, which, I mean, technically I'm not necessarily against that. I'm for school choice. So I would like to be able to choose the curriculum. That's another thing. But like the entire time they've been saying like, well, how dare you suppose that we can be abstinent and sex is a human right and all these other things, which sex is a human right. Good luck with that one. Cause that entails that rape is okay. Yikes. But anyway, so like the fact that the entire time they've been saying that abstinence isn't okay, and then as soon as something doesn't go their way, they immediately flip flop and they're like, "Guess what? Abstinence." Like you must have no principles, okay? And
whatsoever.
then as soon as and like you were saying earlier, like you just are not paying attention to us. If you genuinely think that you going on a sex strike is going to have any effect on us at all, except for us saying yes, that means that fewer pro-choice people will be born. Like,
your terms are acceptable.
Your terms are acceptable.
Right. Like that's perfectly fine. We are okay with that. And there's one other thing I was going to say, but I forget what it was. But yeah, they just aren't paying any attention to us, and I honestly would be embarrassed if I was them, but if I was them, I wouldn't know any different because
you would
they
be
just
like, totally
you wouldn't know embarrassment.
We're basically like Willy Wonka in like the movie. It's like, oh no, stop! Oh dang! No!
Yeah, no, please,
no, come back! Don't go.
Dang that!
And then one of these final comments: if you're a man who won't get a vasectomy, even though it's reversible, and you're not in the streets fighting for my rights, you do not deserve to have sex with me. So talking about the vasectomy argument, apparently just yesterday,
a lot lately on the vasectomy.
Oh,
argument.
I know, really dumb. But apparently it gets even dumber. So there's a U.S. politician proposing mandatory vasectomy law in wake of abortion rights being overturned. So in Oklahoma, sorry Johnny, lawmaker has proposed a bill that would force American boys to undergo forced vasectomies in the wake of the Supreme Court's abortion ruling. State Representative Mickey Dolenz called on his peers to co-author the bill that would take away male reproduction rights until they were found to be fit by the state. Because that's who you want to be found to be fit by. In order to prove that they are fit to manage their own bodily autonomy, Dolenz proposed the young man be made to show they are both emotionally and financially stable. Yep. Does this sound insane? Perhaps even a little familiar? That's the entire point.
He's an idiot, so we'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Problem is that me not having a vasectomy doesn't kill anybody.
Yep.
I'm a monogamous pro-life man married to a monogamous pro-life woman. Me and my functional genitalia isn't killing anybody. Our objection to abortion is that it kills somebody. These are very different things. Like we just went like at the same time. Like it just shows again, they're just not thinking. They're not paying attention to us, and they're not thinking. And like none of this makes any sense. But of course, I don't know. Maybe even it probably doesn't even make any sense from their internal perspective. I don't know. Maybe they're just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing if it sticks. And if it sticks, they run with that. Like recently, a whole bunch of people, pro-life people that are like in charge of like pages or organizations. We have all been getting the same DM on Twitter and Instagram and on Facebook where it asks charge of like, is this a human? And it's a picture of the elephant embryo. And we're all like, I don't know. I can't tell. Like, oh no, I can't tell if it's an elephant embryo or not. I guess that means human rights don't exist. Like what? There's not there is not a single wrinkle on their silky smooth brains. And it's driving me nuts because I don't even know what else I can say. So I just continue to make fun of them.
This is actually such a great comment. So on YouTube, we have a comment from Valiant Thor. I've learned 90% of modern women want the power and benefits of a man, the privilege of entitlements of a woman, and the responsibility and accountability of a child. That was so great.
That's amazing. Good job.
That was great. I enjoyed that.
No, okay. So
although I do have my children, they are responsible for their own actions. So
that's the way.
Maybe a little bit less than my children.
It's the way.
Yeah, you might want to do less than my daughter because she's pretty accountable.
Yeah. Well,
mine are not.
The only thing we're calling for is for people to feel to take responsibility. Like we always argue, we always say it's like like you're forcing women to get pregnant. I'm like, no, we're basically saying you've made a choice that you want to live, you want to have sex. That means that it comes with inherent risk. What all you want is to remove the risk that's inherent in there and remove the responsibility. But when you become pregnant, you are now a mother. You now have an inherent responsibility for the child that you have. Now, one quick thing I wanted to say to you, Elijah, I want to see what you think about this. I found this very helpful. I don't know where I heard it, but it's the separation between what's called forced benevolence and prohibited malevolence. And it's a good way of differentiating between two different kinds of things. Forced benevolence is like, for example, the violinist argument. Like you've heard this one that comes around. They're like, oh, what if you're like, you suddenly wake up and you're hooked to a violinist and you're forced against your will to be benevolent and keep them alive, right? That's forced benevolence. However, abortion is different in that it's prohibited. What we want it to be is we want it to be prohibited malevolence. In other words, you're stopping someone from committing evil, not forcing someone to do good. And I found this to be a very helpful distinction.
Yeah, I've phrased it not exactly in those terms, but I've talked about like in the analogy to organ donation, where people will say like forced organ donation. I'll bring up the idea that organ donation is actually supererogatory, which that's a philosophical term for basically going above and beyond what you are required to do. Yeah. So like basically, a parent is required morally to provide a minimal amount of care to their child. That is standard. That is not supererogatory. It is what you are required to do. And so if we're talking about like, let's just say a 2-year-old, me going above and beyond for, let's say my 4-year-old, me going above and beyond for my 4-year-old would be like to donate, I don't know, plasma or something like that. Cause like, it's not necessarily required of me, but it would be me doing my fatherly duty. That is not essential to my fatherly duty. It's supererogatory. But me killing my child, that's something that's like a bare minimum, like what you shouldn't do. So what you said, preventing malevolence. So yeah, I think it's a good way to do it. I think it's might be a little more complex for the standard pro-choice Twitter user, but it is a good distinction to make. So maybe we can.
I really can.
Yeah, maybe we can find a way to like kind of narrow it down, like
good and
force good and don't do bad.
Don't do bad.
Abortion bad.
Abortion.
Stop it.
Yeah, because all we're doing
bumper sticker right there.
Right.
Abortion bad.
What we're trying to basically tell people is like there's a difference between forcing someone against their will to do good and requiring someone to do something that they should be doing. It's like you have a responsibility not to not to light Johnny Ray's house on fire. Like that's kind of a responsibility. Don't do it.
Yeah, I'm gonna need you to not do that.
Yeah,
I just moved in here. I need you to stop that.
We're all pro-life, so we're all like against like setting Johnny Ray's house on fire. However, it's a difference between that saying like you can't do evil and saying you have to do good against your will. It's like we need to force Johnny Ray to go outside and mow the lawn of every neighbor in his block against his will because that's just the general good. And like it's a major difference between forcing someone to do good and requiring and prohibiting someone from doing evil. And I found this super helpful in a lot of online discussions because that differentiates the category. Two different categories. One is forcing someone to do something that they're not required to do, and one is prohibiting someone from doing something that they're not allowed to do. Totally different things. Right?
Mm-hmm.
By the way, Valiant Thor says something. I thought this was hilarious. I don't know where they're getting these things. They said, two different things. Traditional woman, what can I do for you? Civilization flourishes. Feminist woman, what can you do for me? Civilization crashes.
Pretty much.
I think that probably also applies to men too.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think
Cross
Yeah,
the
I would say it
board.
applies equally.
Yep, definitely applies equally. We
Take
well,
that,
we
Valiant
live in
Thor.
a society where take that valiant Thor. Yeah.
The battle is on.
All right, so now we're into the
Loki
final
over
part of
here.
our conversation,
Loki.
and what we've all sort of been looking forward to, of course, while we brought on American guests to talk about what direction America. Yeah.
I don't have a
Hell
flag
yeah.
out here. I should have a flag behind me.
Yeah,
Dang
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Considering
See, I have
Steven has
the
enough
Canadian flag
flag,
upside down because we're always in a state of distress. It's always something.
but in America,
Wait.
America, you should be like, whoa, what's this?
It is a quilt.
In my garage.
No,
I think it might be Ohio.
Oh.
Nice.
So
Oh.
Very fancy. Very fancy.
Very
I like it.
patriotic.
Very patriotic.
Okay.
Stark County Sheriff. yeah.
Timothy A. Swanson. Okay. Sure.
There we go, though. Yeah.
Yeah.
America.
Okay. That's patriotic.
America.
America. Yeah.
Now, quick, Steven, before you move on to that,
Yeah, of course.
because we're going to be talking about what to do now. But obviously, it was last Friday. I want to ask you guys, guys, like Elijah and Johnny, what are your thoughts on the actual legal decision that was made? What are some takeaways or some things that you found interesting about it? I remember like reading through all the things that were said and some of the interesting things about Roberts, about Kavanaugh, what they said, what Clarence Thomas said. I want to get your thoughts on the decision itself because I thought that was very interesting, and maybe you can kind of give me some feedback or thoughts on that, on the Dobbs decision. Did you look into it at all?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know a lot about it. I followed it as it was kind of happening. I ended up like skimming the leak. For me, I don't know. I'm not really into like the nitty gritty of the politics. I will run with whatever we currently have, but I find getting intimately involved with a certain political whatevers is just mentally exhausting for me. It's not where my mind typically goes. But in terms of a government philosophy, the United States was essentially founded on individual rights and individualism. And so the idea that the federal government should weigh in on something like this was wrong to begin with. And actually taking it away from the federal government, taking it away from what the Supreme Court said in 1973 and giving it back to the states actually makes it more democratic. Because the individual states have representatives that are elected, and the elected representatives are responsible to the people that they are in charge of, and then they can make the decisions accordingly. So there's this weird idea that removing the statute that Roe versus Wade implemented is somehow an attack on our democracy. Two things. One, we're a representative constitutional republic, so we're not actually a democracy. And two, it actually is more democratic because it brings it back down to the states. So I think in general, Roe versus Wade itself was a very stupid decision. They found a right to abortion in a right to privacy clause, and it did not exist there. It has never existed there.
It's hidden in there somewhere. I'm telling you.
Yeah, it definitely exists
Invisible ink,
somewhere.
like
If
on the
you
back of
squint
the
and turn your
Declaration
head.
of Independence.
They need Nicolas Cage to, crack the code.
Of course.
You'd be able to figure that one out.
You take the Constitution, you kind of pull it back, and it's like a magic eye thing. You're like, oh, there it is.
Oh, you gotta look at it like at a slant, and it'd be like, abortion is a law.
It's in there. Johnny, what are your thoughts on the Dobbs thing?
Yeah.
I think that, Elijah made the best point, and I was going to make that point, and he stole it from me. Thank you. Now we are at war. Now we are at war. But the way that they've done it now is the most democratic way. They took it out of the hands of a bunch of appointed lifetime people and put it into the states where not you two, because you guys don't get any say in anybody's vote, but me and Elijah can go down and we can vote on the people that we want, and we can vote for the people that are going to implement the laws that we support. And the biggest takeaway that I have from it is that the reason that the left and pro-choice people are mad is because now if they live in a red state such as Oklahoma or Texas, that they now have to drive to another state if they'd like to kill their baby.
Right?
It's terrible, and with
Someone
gas
get
prices
addicted
so
to murder?
high,
Gas prices.
with gas prices as high as they are, I could see why they'd be upset.
Yeah.
But it really is. It's the most democratic way. It shouldn't have been any kind of Supreme Court ruling to begin with. It was kind of forced. When Roe v. Wade was instituted, it was a forced thing. It was something that the loudest, most obnoxious people got what they wanted. And now, 40 years, 50 years later, it now was the loudest people got what they want. And pro-life is going to be ultimately the loudest, but we're smart about being loud. They're loud just to be obnoxious. We're loud to prove a point. And I think it was the greatest thing. And this is coming from a person who I don't believe abortion should be legal anywhere for any reason at all. I think that if you get pregnant, carry the baby, put it up for adoption. Do I think that our foster care system needs work? Yes, a lot of it. But that I don't suggest that we kill the baby and leave the adoption system broken. I suggest we fix the adoption system and not kill the baby.
Where could we possibly get all this money to fix the adoption system? If only there was some source of money where we could draw towards a
or maybe there was some cause which Americans gave money to, which was entirely unnecessary.
It's literally blanking. I'm blanking. I got nothing here. Now, a real quick shout out for Dobbs, because it's amazing. I find it funny that here I'm Canadian and I know so much about the Dobbs decision. I have literally read and reread so much about it that I feel like
Danny is like the over researcher. I have to bring him back in so many segments, because it'll be like 40-minute long segments and be like, okay, we still have to do the rest of the show, Danny, and he'll be like, but I have so much more, and I'm like, I don't care, just shut it down.
Pull the plug.
The thing I found really interesting about that obviously, I thought Thomas was a weird kind of position for him to take. He's like, well, I'm gonna agree with the other justices just to kind of make it look good, but you know what? I'm still
Roberts, not Thomas.
Who's the?
Yeah, I'm like, how dare you take away from the sacred name of Thomas?
Robert, sorry, right. John Roberts. Yeah, he's gonna be a pussy. He's like, oh, okay, I want to please everybody. Kavanaugh was kind of also kind of a bit of a wimp. He's like, well, abortion is not our thing, but it's never going to be a thing. Don't stop coming to my house and knocking and
stop coming to my house and harassing my family.
He's basically saying it's not our business. Get out of my yard, kids. He's like the angry grandpa. But who's the Clarence Thomas? Clarence Thomas. Clarence Thomas's little sub thing that he did was phenomenal. The Alito tried hard to say, you know what? Don't worry, this is going to come after your contraception, and this is going to come against your gay marriage, and it's not going to come against your other things. And Clarence Thomas is like, well, maybe it should. He was like, oh, dang, son, dang. Love that.
From what I understand, that statement that he made, and I have to look more into this, so don't take what I'm saying as 100% guaranteed gospel truth. But from what I understand, is he was not necessarily saying that that the Supreme Court is looking to overturn things like interracial marriage or same-sex marriage or contraception or anything like that. But the thing that he was pointing out was that, like Roe v. Wade, where the right to an abortion did not exist where they said it was, maybe these other rights don't exist where they say it does. So that I think this is actually an even better approach, because instead of finding it where it doesn't exist, just do it like normal, do it like how you should. If we need an amendment, do an amendment, do this how it's supposed to be done. Don't try to you dissect and turn it sideways and squeeze out these rights that don't exist in there. If we want them to exist, we have a way to do that.
Yeah.
And the way they did it is just not good.
Yeah, he was saying don't find something where it's not. Don't create something out of thin air. go about it the proper way, and that it had Roe v. Wade done that to begin with, then we wouldn't be having this discussion in 2022. There would have been no
we
need
probably
for it.
would be like where Europe is. We'd probably, where a lot of Europe is, we'd probably just have like some kind of an abortion ban after like viability. Like that's where a lot of other countries are. But like, because we went from Roe v. Wade to now it being overturned, we're just swinging the pendulum. And
yeah,
I mean, realistically, if it was legal up until viability, I would still be fighting against that. But we probably would have settled somewhere, like
we would have settled into some median area as opposed to extreme left and extreme right. There would have been a middle ground that could have been viability. I would have argued against it because what's viable? You can't define viable. It's either conception or birth. That's the only two constants.
The best way to put it is like, if you're an African, viable, like, if you're like African American living in some tribe way in the middle of Ethiopia, you're viable at birth. Like literally, like, because sometimes you can't survive.
Yep.
They don't have the technology to be able to keep you viable. So I'm like, well, that standard goes.
Space, you're not viable at all.
Yep.
No, underwater, you're not viable either. It's like
not viable underwater.
You're in a submarine. I could kill you. Why?
Antifa is not viable outside of their mom's basement.
Yep. Unless they have a cement shake.
Yep. A cement shake.
You gotta throw it at those pro-choice people coming.
Yep.
Better bring a whole lot of shakes, buddy.
All right. Now we're gonna actually get into the Now we're gonna talk about where the movement goes. And I actually had an interesting question. Now, I don't know about you, Johnny, but I know Elijah, you're of course Christian and probably a faithful churchgoer, I would assume.
One of us.
I run the soundboard at my church, and I run the young adult ministry at my house too.
Cool.
Nice.
And I'm sure they're all involved in your memes.
I watch Bible movies a lot.
I've watched God Is Not Dead 20 times.
Oh, no.
Banned for
I
life.
watch a lot of the 10 Commandments.
That's what makes you Christian, though, Johnny. Don't you know that, like, just like, going to church makes you a Christian, like, standing in the garage makes you a car.
Yeah.
There you go.
I am a vehicle.
Boom.
You
should identify as an SUV.
That's right.
Well, one of the best memes that I saw in terms of that is like there's this demon that shows up to heaven. It's like, identify as an angel. We don't play that game here.
We don't play that game.
But in regards to Roe, and how does your church, Elijah, how does your church react and respond in terms of pro-life stuff?
So my church didn't actually do anything for the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Like, they didn't even say anything last week. I was kind of expecting them to, because in general, they tend to kind of comment on things. Not like in overly, not overly, like, we don't really tend to focus on it, but they didn't even say anything. And I was running the soundboard, so I probably could have grabbed a microphone and been like, "Yo, guys, let's talk about Roe v. Wade." But like,
Row.
Yeah. But in general, so my church has we have a bunch of like local one specific local pregnancy resource center that we donate to. We have, it's called Compass Care. It was actually, you guys may have seen it. One of the ones that was firebombed last week.
I was gonna say, was it fire?
Yeah, that was the one literally 8 minutes from my house. So
Whoa.
right over there.
Dang,
so
son.
yeah, it was very close to my house, which is so stupid because it's completely legal in New York. Like, what are you freaks doing?
What are you doing?
Bomb Oklahoma.
Hey, whoa. Go to Johnny's house.
This is ridiculous. Bomb his house. Anyway.
This man. Impeach him.
Yeah, exactly. Him. But anyway, so yeah, my church, we didn't say anything particular about Roe v. Wade, but we do have a very good culture of life. We have, we donate to the Crisis Pregnancy Center down the road. We actually had a lot of people from our church involved in starting it up. It originally started in Rochester, which is like 2 hours-ish to the east of me. And then they opened up another location here about 3 years ago, I think. And then we had a bunch of people donating. We had a bunch of people helping out with the construction. We had a few people, actually, I don't know how many because I wasn't available, but we had a few people help clean up after the bombing. We have clothes and baby stuff that we regularly donate. And we are one of the churches that, depending on when the woman who comes in with a crisis pregnancy, we are one of the communities that they will send them to. I don't know how many women have come because of that, because I'm not really like in the church leadership that would be getting the calls and stuff. But we have, so my church is like, I think membership wise, we're at like 200-ish. So we're not a huge church, but we are pretty big.
Yeah.
But in that chunk of those are adult members, we have 70 children.
Wow.
So it's an absurd number of children. So we are very welcoming we have a lot of single moms, not a lot, but we have several single moms who are very intimately involved, interconnected with the church. So like I think our church is a great community. So like we do talk about it, but it just didn't happen this last time.
Well,
maybe it'll be next week where they're like, we forgot
sort of
to say
similar.
something, our bad.
Amen.
Yeah, no, like, because of course in Canada, our church has a bit of a reputation in our city.
We're the rebel church.
We are the rebel church.
That wants to take out the Death Star.
Yeah, our pastor got arrested twice.
That's right.
Sick, based.
Yeah, so, but we meant, like, I wasn't there because my kids were all sick on Sunday, but
I was there.
I know, but they did mention it from the pulpit.
Yes, they did.
And I was like, at home, I'm like, all right, I'm going to scour through like other live streams of other churches in the city. I'm like, do they say anything? Because I know that like at other times of the year, a lot of the other churches in our city, when it comes to almost any prominent modern issue, they won't say a thing. And it's something that's really interesting in how the churches respond to even mildly political issues in Canada versus the United States. In the United States, churches are much more politically active than they are here.
We actually want many of them to be more politically active.
Yes,
we can be. We're allowed to be.
Yeah,
we're
allowed to.
Yeah. Like here.
Whereas here in Canada, like our church is reasonably politically active, and we have like a ministry which goes to the one major abortion clinic in Calgary, and they'll like stand outside the decent distance away with signs, and I've gone a couple times.
Where they're allowed to stand.
Yeah. And
tiny little pamphlets.
Yeah.
No, outside of the abortion clinic, you can have full-size banners. But outside schools, you could only have the tiny little pamphlets.
It's
School
awesome though, because they throw cupcakes at all the women going in. Like, here you go.
Bomb them with cupcakes.
That's right.
But in comparison, like all the other churches, they will completely ignore any of these issues. And, well, yes, they do donate to the local pregnancy care center that we have. They will ignore it on every other occasion. And that drives me a little crazy. How important do you feel the church's role is, and religion's role in general, in moving the pro-life movement forward?
You asking us that?
Well, yeah, American people.
The Americans.
I mean, I think it's very important. But at the same time, I don't necessarily see it as valuable when we're making exclusively religious arguments.
Of course.
Like it entirely depends on the context of who you're talking to. But I think if a lot of times it'll be like, we'll see like, the pro-choice people who are non-religious or something, and they'll say things like, it's just a religious perspective. And I'm not necessarily against that. Because if it is just a religious perspective that you should not kill innocent human beings, then maybe that religion is right. But it's not. Like, it's not. So depending on the audience, we should be using the appropriate, I guess, tactics, if we want to call it that.
Okay.
But I think it's very important for the church to get involved because we do have a regular source of income. from donations, from tithing and things like that, that we are able to actually affect change.
Yeah.
I had my kid's birthday party was this last weekend, and I went to church to grab some tables. Here they are. I haven't returned them yet. However, when I was there, I know, I signed the paper, but so as I'm carrying the tables out,
that's all it takes to steal.
Exactly.
American thievery
That's all the IRS has to do.
Like,
and so what I meant,
grab all their tables, be like,
so the IRS has to do.
I left a promise, and I'll bring them back.
Just like taxation. So the reason I bring that up is because when I was bringing the tables up the stairs, there was a guy that came up to me, and this is the third time that he's done this, and he said, "Hey, I just want to let you know that my business is doing really well, and I wanted you to have some money." And I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "Here's some money to just give to whichever pro-life cause that you deem worthy." And so he gave me $500, and I still have it in my pocket, like it's inside. And so the first time that he gave me however much money, I believe it was donated to a bunch of people who I think Albany, Rose, and a couple other people that are online were doing like some fundraising. And I think I just put it into my account and then put it in my Venmo and just kind of spent it. And then the second time I donated to Compass Care. And the third time I'm like, this is sweet. I'm going to give it to somebody else too. So like, I think the idea that we all in the church are playing a specific role, and this guy apparently just has really good business acumen. His business is doing great, and I can allocate his money accordingly. And I think that's really awesome. And I think that's something that maybe maybe isn't unique to the church, but is definitely a strength of the church. So I think it's super important.
I'm just going to throw this out there. If you've got, money, I could always,
Donation
to
the pro-life
I got a
ministry of
film
Johnny.
company I'm producing. I got all kinds of stuff. I could use money.
Right.
Send it over.
Elijah,
Maybe I'll
donate
it too.
Elijah, I am a king, and I need to send you a whole bunch of bullion in gold and all that. I need you to send me some money to kind of.
He's a prince of Nigeria.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We got it.
Yeah. No, like I one of my friends from church posted this. It's from The Chorus and the Chaos. So I thought this was a really good analysis. With the recent Roe v. Wade overruling, logic suggests that there will be an increase of children up for adoption in the coming years. Praise God. Now, maybe more than ever, God's people need to respond in a big way. Let us be as pro-life as we are called to be and rise to the occasion. Here's a proposal. We have building funds, benevolence funds, media funds, and so on. When we start a fund for adoptions, the goal being that each local church to gather resources to cover the entire cost of an adoption for a family in their local body. This is a relatively low barrier option for implementation with a huge potential impact. Consider for a moment if even 50% of churches in America did this, thousands of children will be given homes. And of course, it quotes James 1, verse 27, religion that is pure and undefiled before God is this, to visit orphans and widows in their affliction and to keep oneself unstained from the world.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm actually going to propose that this upcoming Sunday. I'm going to tell them exactly that.
Yeah.
And maybe we can reallocate some of the funds that we're giving to Compass Care, or maybe just some more.
Or maybe, even talking to Compass Care and having Compass Care, advertise and be like, okay, we have a lot of things that we do at our pro-life centers. And another thing that we're going to start doing is we're going to start allocating some of those funds that we get in donations to adoptions to make it easier for people to adopt so that we're not putting such a strain on the foster care system.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think one of the
one more thing from Elijah.
Okay.
Sorry, I was just going to say, just for the sake of clarification, which I don't know how, because you said adoption and then the foster care system. I just wanted to make sure that we know that they're two different things.
They are.
So the adoption system is one thing, and the foster care is the initial or the intent of the foster care system. This isn't necessarily just for you, but it's for anybody. Is the intent of the foster care system is to reunite them with their family. And so typically adoptions don't happen out of the foster care system, although they can. So I just wanted to clarify that to make sure that people know, because I think there's a lot of people, especially within the pro-life community, who think foster and adoption.
A lot of people conflate the two. They will conflate foster care reform and adoption reform, and they think that if you go into foster care, you're going to get adopted, when that's 9 out of 10 times inaccurate. 9 out of 10 times you go into foster care, you're either consistent in foster care or you get replaced with your family. that DHS or CPS had taken you from and placed you there.
Yeah, foster care is usually for rejected kids that, for whatever reason, either they come from abusive families, the family can't take care of, whatever reason, they're usually thrown in there as the state is now in charge of these children.
Yeah.
Whereas adoption is almost exclusively focused on newborns that need to find a home, and there's so much demand for kids for newborns to be adopted. Whereas there's a reason why it's difficult to get kids who are rejected into adopted, because they usually come with a massive amount of baggage. The foster care system is more difficult to find the kid for them. So yeah, it's a good differentiation to make. It comes up all the time in pro-choice arguments.
Elijah has another statement to make.
Point of note, if you guys did want to learn a lot more about adoption and foster care, you could actually have Pixel Protectors come on the podcast.
Yes, I would love that.
He has adopted and fostered.
Shameless plug. I like
He knows a lot about this stuff. So yeah, I mean, reach out to him.
I will.
If you guys want to.
I'll be like, hey, dude, do you remember me? Like, I don't even. It'll be problematic because I don't remember my old Twitter name. So I'll be like, do you remember this guy? Like, we connected on Facebook maybe once, and I know that you were involved with HDI.
Swear I'm not a stalker. I swear.
I've only been looking
find you for
5 years,
man.
Oh, we could connect. I'm right outside your house.
I'm right outside your house. Hello.
Yeah. In the windowless van, I have kittens.
That is a really nice living room set you have there.
Don't worry, I have vaccines for everyone.
Vaccines for everyone.
That was our government, right? Last spring.
Oh boy.
During COVID, it was terrible.
Yeah. Okay. So, clearly, church needs to be involved in progressing the movement forward. Now, in terms, it's very different between Canada and the United States, because in Canada, the pro-life movement it's not virtually non-existent, but it's virtually invisible.
Yeah.
In the United States, you know when the March for Life is. You know when these events are happening because they're widely publicized. Pro-life organizations are very public. Whereas in Alberta, Danny knew. I didn't even know that we were having an Alberta March for Life.
Yeah.
And we probably had about 200 people in a province of 4.5 million show up to the March for Life in Alberta.
Yeah, that was a solid showing.
Yeah, solid showing of 200 people. It used to be
thousands. I went
thousands.
to the one in Ottawa.
Yeah, you actually mentioned that in our first conversation, that you went to the one in Ottawa and then you spoke and nobody knew who you were.
Yeah. Well, a handful of people knew who I was, which was kind of nice. But most of the people were like, "Who this guy?" But yeah, it was fun. I think it was originally kind of interesting too, because I guess we were originally slotted to go this way or something, but then last minute, the internal workings of whoever was in charge of it was actually, we're gonna go the other way, sneaky, and they dodged the pro-choice crowd, and we went into this big block, and then just dissipated. I was like, well, because I've been to the March for Life in the US twice, and then we go from way over here to way over here. We start at one very, very particular spot, and we walk all the way down to the Capitol building, and we're standing right in front of the White House and all this other stuff. So it's a very big deal, lots and lots of people. But then when I went to there, I was like, oh, look at that, I can see the end of the line.
It's so quaint.
Oh, adorable little Canada.
Oh, you little scamp.
And your maple syrup and your moose.
Your maple syrup and your moose.
Go ride your polar bear back to your...
Yeah.
With your hockey sticks.
We love our hockey sticks, man.
The thing is that in Canada, it's weird. Canada is so much more socialist than the US, because we've always been told since we were little, they're Medicare,
yeah.
But really, for those of us who know, Medicare sucks, because it is just a broken system that is just getting more expensive and getting worse and worse. But as a result, I think a lot of Canadians that government good. This is why COVID was such a disaster here, because everyone just thought our government, understands. Our government knows.
They know what's best for us, and so we're gonna follow their. I heard that so many times that I would tell people, I'd be like, okay, well, clearly the government made they were wrong. The lockdowns were harmful. Like,
Yeah.
the government can't just continually tell you the lockdowns were good. And they're like, but I trust the government. And therefore they must be doing good. And they've never done, like...
Sorry.
I know, trusting government. It's a trigger phrase for Elijah. I'm so sorry.
Don't worry. This is my Trudeau bucket. Whenever I talk about Trudeau, I need it.
I need to cuddle myself with an American flag right now.
With the American.
I gotta get my gas and flag. Be like, so cool.
Yeah, my gas and flag flew away.
And gonna get my gun.
Gonna get my gun.
That's pretty much about the only guns we're allowed to have.
Yeah,
here.
assault hammers.
Assault hammers. Yeah. Hey, do you have a permit for that, man?
Yeah.
I'm advocating to ban the assault hammers in Canada.
Yeah,
that's right.
Oh, they will.
They're getting there. They're
Yeah. Well, they already had like a scandal where it was like the RCMP were like colluding with the federal government, being like, "So can we use this event to ban guns?
Yeah.
Can we like manipulate an investigation so that we can like convince the government to ban guns? Yes, we can.
Totally legit. Totally legit.
But anyways,
that's the problem with Canada. Is that this was actually something I was saying to some friends the other day. Some friends for a barbecue, and one of the girls is from Mexico, and I'm from Mexico too. I was born in Mexico. I know I look at it, right. But the thing is like that. When I talked to her, I asked her about the States, and she's like, "Oh, America, no, Canada's great." And I'm like, I used to think that back when I was in elementary school.
Back when I was young and uninformed.
Back when I was a big dummy.
Yep.
I would do
a big dum dum.
Right? Like it's amazing. I now believe that the States is a much better place to live than not everywhere, obviously.
Yeah, not New York.
Fire,
New York. Let's kick them out into the ocean.
Right? But Canada is just a giant disaster. We are living under a de facto dictatorship.
Mm-hmm.
Like, quite literally.
And of course, like, a de facto dictatorship that is totally open about pushing a message which is countercultural and counterintuitive to life and to liberty. Like, the fact that in the United States, when Roe is overturned, and you have Justin Trudeau saying, this is terrible, in Canada we'll always accept life, and, like, my minister is already preparing plans so that if American women want to, they can come up to Canada and we'll pay for their abortions. And I'm like, I want to burn my nation down.
Where's my assault hammer? I'm gonna get
where's my assault hammer? No, you cannot come to Canada to have an abortion.
But this is why it's discouraging here, because in Canada, we basically have a federal government that right from day one, from the second Trudeau became prime minister or became leader of the Liberals before the first election that he did, he said, if you are pro-life, you have no place in the Liberal Party. Day one. That was the first thing he said. And then from then on, he has been at war with anything even remotely resembling pro-life, including the pro-life pregnancy care centers, which he has threatened to defund because he hates them. And so, and sadly, there's no federal party, not even the Conservative Party here, which is not close. It's not even like close to the Republican Party. The Conservative Party in Canada
we're basically Democrat light.
Yeah, they have no intention of even bringing up the abortion.
0 calories.
So we have a long road to go. But thank you,
0 calories
Elijah,
and 0 freedom.
To you, Johnny, and to all the Americans, and to Trump, and to Mitch McConnell, and to the incredible ACB, and all the other not the Democrats.
No, I'm just using the Mitch McConnell voice.
You are a city on a hill down there. You're a city on a hill, and thankfully, I'm hoping that most Canadians go blind. And while they're going blind,
Canadians go blind.
That's right.
Yeah.
No, it's great. Good to see you guys taking the lead.
Yes, America taking the lead is fantastic. Now, of course, one last kind of topic in terms of like how the movement moves forward. I'd say one of the biggest things that is not just about the pro-life issue, but about everything would be the cultural divide and of course this is not just in the United States, but it's also in Canada. How do we should we use the pro-life ministry? Should we use the pro-life movement to try and breach that divide? Should we say, okay, well, those are the pro-abortees. There's nothing we can do for them. We're just going to cast them aside, throw them off the side of the bridge, put them down into the river. How do you kind of gauge, and how important would you say it is to bridge that gap? Because of course, right now, are we only going for those in the middle? Are we only going for those who are sort of in the, well, I want abortion, but I want abortion only a little bit? Like, I think back to going to Steven Crowder's Changed My Mind on Pro-Life. The one woman comes on, she's like, I want abortion until 9 months, and he's like, okay, bye. Like, do we have that response? And it's just like, okay, well, for some people, it's like, Lord, come down, smite them with your holy power, and change their hearts.
From heaven.
But how are we interested in breaching that gap? Because there are some people which are so far gone, and you feel like there's nothing you can do.
A solidly 2-minute setup for one question.
I'm sorry.
So for me, for the last probably 5 years, I have been weirdly obsessed with the psychology of persuasion. I've read probably 8 or 9 books on it. If you guys know who social psychologist Jonathan Haidt is, or Haidt, he is great. He wrote a book called The Righteous Mind: Why Good People Disagree on Politics and Religion. He wrote a bunch of other books. There's a couple other books that I don't remember off the top of my head, but general persuasion has been really high on my priority list. And I have found that outside of the meme page, just because the meme page, like we were talking about earlier, the point of the meme page is just to have like an echo chamber kind of a thing, like to rally the troops. But if we're actually talking about real persuasion, there are actual techniques that you can learn and you can actually get good at. And it's not manipulative. It's not like being shysty with anything. It's just genuinely having good conversations with people who are willing and open to changing their mind, because so are you. And it's so frustrating to like watch the political divide happen while also studying why it's happening. And like, I'm sitting here like, not really much I can do about this, but I have managed to have plenty of conversations, real life conversations with people that like I actually know, and sometimes on Facebook, sometimes on Twitter, sometimes on Instagram, but that's much less common. And I appreciate what, like when some people approach something by giving like just the facts, like I forget, one of you guys were talking about that earlier. But unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I'm not entirely sure, because I don't know how I feel about this, but we are social creatures, not just logic creatures. We're not Spock. And so we form groups that we're able to kind of change our minds in groups. And I think I just squished a moth on the back of my head. So the
moth is not a social creature.
Change
pro-choice,
right? Towards the light. So we're able to change our minds based on new data, but only in certain contexts. And I think if it is our goal to be persuasive and to change the culture, it probably can't happen just by throwing facts at people, because we've learned over the last several years, over the last several decades, several thousand years, that people are unpersuaded by just throwing facts at them. And so I think if we as individuals are looking to be as persuasive as we can, we are obligated to study the persuasive techniques and learn to have better conversations with people. Because I've done it. I've seen people change. I've seen myself change. And if ultimately at the end of the day, if our goal is to join other humans in the pursuit of truth, then we should be open to changing our minds as well, in the same way that other people should be open to be having their minds change too. So that's my thought.
That was one heck of a monologue. You my dog, you got me monologuing.
He always does that whenever because I'll go on these, like, my monologues will be like, the groomers are coming for our children, and then he's just like, you caught me monologuing. I'm like, you did it.
The whole time I'm preparing my counterattack to take down this. It's a massive plan here. It's like all perfectly set up. Johnny, what do you think is the path forward?
I mean, I'd love to see everybody in America switch to pro-life and decide that, babies don't need to be killed for contraception. But I know logically that's never going to happen because you'll never get 100% of anybody behind anything, especially when it comes to those hot button issues. I'm a firm believer in talk to who you can, change the minds of those you can, and the ones that you can't change their mind, hope that they phase themselves out, particularly with the abstinence. What's that?
Wrap them in the Gatson flag until they stop struggling.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully their abstinence takes off and they stop reproducing. Yeah. So that's the best you can hope for.
We'll feed them out.
Yeah, basically, it's kind of like the nature versus nurture. I mean, if they continue to kill themselves off in blue states, then eventually there's nothing but red left.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting. And I'm just I'll just go to you in just a second here, Danny. Like the first, because I have a bit of a different past than you guys. Like I was raised in this Christian home, and we never really talked too much about pro-life stuff. A ton, because it wasn't something that was super common to talk about here in Canada. And then when I found out about it because I think it was in about 2008, and there was a doctor, the most prominent abortion doctor in Canada, Henry Morgentaler, was to be given the Order of Canada. And I'm like, okay, why is a doctor being given the Order of Canada? I looked him up and I'm like, why are we giving the Order of Canada to like a serial killer? This is messed up. And so I started this Facebook page and I'm like, revoke his Order of Canada. It only had like 10 people show up. And I'm like, ah! But I had this one person message me out of it. And she was pro-choice, and she's like, okay, how can you support these things? And so I was like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to defend pro-life stuff. I'm going to do what I can do at 16. And so I clearly had a bad, overhyped image of myself. But I somehow, at 16, using a lot of emotional arguments, but I somehow convinced her. And I was like, oh my gosh, I just convinced this woman that was pro-choice that she said, if I get pregnant, I'll raise the kid or I'll adopt it out. I will not choose abortion. And my mind was blown. I was like, I just convinced this person that could potentially save a life. And that was so meaningful to me. And to see some people's minds get changed is when people's minds get changed, it's such a meaningful encounter. And always, of course, you're not going to encounter people you're not going to change people's minds that are really far across the aisle if they come in saying, I'm going to have this position, I'm going to stick to it. I always try and aim that I'm going to go for those in the middle. And I know that's not the best way of looking at things. It's a very short-term goal. But for me, it's an achievable goal in that short term, and that's a way to short-term change the culture. Because, of course, as we all know, culture is downstream of politics. No, politics is downstream of culture. I had it wrong.
Downstream of culture.
Yeah. We change the culture, we can change the politics. Right now, of course, we look at culture. We look at modern society. We see how much it is aligned against the pro-life movement in that you can look at Roe v. Wade being overturned, and it's like, oh, look, a Hollywood celebrity that supports pro-life. I've been raving about Adam Baldwin because I'm a huge Firefly fan, and Adam Baldwin is actually pro-life. And I'm like, woo! Somebody in Hollywood who I like is actually pro-life. That's amazing. I was so ecstatic about that. But it's sad how little of our culture supports the pro-life message, even though, from our perspective, the pro-life message is so common. It's such common sense. It'd be like, oh, well, they're human. They have intrinsic value. Why wouldn't you support it? That's just crazy. Mm-hmm. And so we have to take back what has been seized from us over the past 50 years. In the States, you have a lot more pull. You can grab those people. And I wish we had that here in Canada. Right now, it's we're clawing our way up to get 2% of people who say that they would support a pro-life law here in Canada. Mm-hmm. It's so trivial and it's so minuscule. Whereas in the States, you have such an advantage, you have such a lead over us. And I wish we had this like key and mystery and immediate solution on how to change the culture to our side. But it's going to take a lot of little small steps. It's going to be a war of attrition. It's going to be changing hearts and minds one at a time. And not everybody is going to be changed. And I'm sure that everybody here acknowledges that. And everybody here is understanding of that. We've all been in probably more pro-life arguments than we can stand. I know that I've been in like 15 in the past weekend.
Yep.
And been called every name under the book.
Yes.
But I've also been told by so many people when you get into these arguments and as you don't react in the same measure that they do. I've gotten a lot of messages saying, I see these messages that you get and I see the messages that you're receiving. Yours are much more reasonable. You certainly aren't changing their mind, but you did change mine.
And that's what I was saying earlier. I don't look to change the mind of the person that I'm debating with at that moment. I look to change the mind of the people going back later and reading it and going, you know what? That makes a lot of sense.
You gotta get the ghosts, the people in the background who are too shy to chime in.
Yeah.
So I totally agree with the way that you guys are saying. My approach is always the more educated, the more you learn about stuff, the better you can discuss things with people. And I find that most of the time, as long as you can present a reasonable, thought out, well argued defense of your position, a lot of people may be like, you know what, I don't agree, but your position actually sounds legitimate. And I think that is a major step, because for most of the people on the pro-choice side, they believe such nonsense about the pro-lifers that they believe that there's absolutely not, that you can't even make even the slightest case for it. But you show them that you can actually make a reasonable case for why you believe what you do. They'll suddenly be like, wow, that actually sounds reasonable. And that's a step towards them rethinking their approach. And that's usually the way it goes. It's very slowly. I have one last question for you guys, my U.S. brothers from another mother. So going forward in the States, do you believe, and I will draw directly from Tim Pool, do you believe that the U.S. is headed to a civil war or to a potential restoration? And the reason I say that, because of the Roe v. Wade thing has really kind of they pushed on that little beehive, and now everyone's all tight and all that. Do you think this will affect the fall elections? Do you think it'll affect the presidency in 2024? Trump, DeSantis, what do you think? Little plug there.
I don't think it's necessarily. I don't think it's going to be a civil war, and I think it's probably mostly not going to be a civil war because, if I'm stereotyping, and I'm stereotyping for a reason, the people who tend to be pro-choice tend to not have guns, and people who have pro-life tend to have at least one or two or many.
That was a great
even us who live in New York, we have guns.
Now you can take
so I don't know. What?
Now you can take them out of the house, because there was another Supreme Court decision that lets you take them out of the house.
I know. It's great. I mean, we did that anyway. Who are we kidding? What's the government gonna do, huh? Anyway, I don't think it's gonna be a civil war. I do think there's going to be a sharp divide, and I think so there's this idea that has been floating around kind of behind the scenes in a lot of libertarian / constitutional traditional conservative circles called the Great Divorce, and it's really complicated, but I don't want to get too much into it. But it's essentially like where the states are really hardline blue and hardline red could potentially turn into a separate country. Whether or not it does it violently or not. I really hope it's not violent, and I mean that very sincerely. I wish no death upon anybody. But if it does end up happening, well, let's just say the state that I currently live in, it would end up being on the wrong side of the issue. I'd end up having to be in the wrong country. But I don't know if that's going to happen. I think it's kind of more, I don't know, maybe Hollywoody that people think that it's like more dramatic than it actually is. I think things are probably going to end up petering out once people actually start to either stop caring about it, because realistically, most people, either left or right, are just told what to care about right now. And right now, it just so happens to be Roe v. Wade. In 2 weeks, people are going to change their Facebook profile pictures to something else.
They're going to have the NPC thing back in their brain.
Remove the Roe v. Wade.
Right.
Yeah,
and put something else back, because it was Ukraine, and then it's
monkeypox.
So people are just told, right? People are told what to care about, and I think they're just going to stop caring about this. And then what they're going to end up seeing is that all the people who are doing these like attacks and stuff are going to notice, oh wait, shoot, I'm actually in a very, very, very Democrat controlled state, so it actually isn't really affecting me at all. There will be some moving around. I think people will probably move around. They're already talking about camping, which means going to a different state for getting an abortion. They're saying like, oh, I'm going to go camping in this other state, and then they go get an abortion. So like they're already talking about that kind of a thing. I think they just really want to be victims. Whatever. So I don't know. I don't think it's going to be a civil war or anything. I think there's going to be some major divisions in terms of like where people fall into like in their personal life, and probably some people moving. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. Moving, like if they tend to live in a rural state, they might move to like New York City or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or at least in New York State. Like right now, I live in Buffalo. It takes me like 7.5 hours to get to New York City. But the entire state has the same policy. So if they want to live in a rural place, just go to Syracuse. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's wide open.
Go live
there.
with my great uncle in Ithaca.
It sounds like you're
Ithaca's the best. I love Ithaca.
It sounds like you're describing what happened with India and Pakistan. Because remember, after the liberation of like the British, they split India into Pakistan and India. India was like Hindu, and Pakistan was like Muslim. And then everyone had to relocate to become part of their area or something like that. So it sounds like that sounds more plausible to me in the States. Like the red states, basically all the people run to the red states that are conservative, and all the loons and crazies run to the blue states, and they basically escape to their little safe spaces and all that.
There's another potentially possible same thing happening like in Russia, Ukraine, where there's that Luhansk and Donetsk or something. I forget how to pronounce that, but those are like people who yep, right on the edge, and they're like, we're Russian, but they are actually technically Ukrainians. But so I think
vodka.
Yeah, get out of here.
The potato.
So I think we'll probably end up just being like a bigger divide. And what that turns into, I'm not entirely sure. But I think it will settle down. Right now, all the dust is in the air, and right now it'll settle, and people will figure it out. And I think people are less likely to engage in violence than they may seem like they are.
Okay, those lefties, I don't know. Yeah, Johnny, really quick, do you think that this will happen? And what do you think?
I completely disagree with the Civil War thing. I think it will happen, not specifically for Roe v. Wade, but for all of the politics that are going on right now between the Second Amendment and the Roe v. Wade and the freedom of speech and BLM. I think it's just gonna keep snowballing until half of the country, or really more. If you look at it statistically, there's almost 20 states that are almost fully red, or at least mostly red, and I think they're eventually going to break away. They're going to say, you know what, we're done. If you want to talk to us, you could call us Jesus Land. I did an entire show like a year ago. I did an entire show on how I think that it's going to when the BLM first started, when they were just firebombing every Democrat city that they could think of. I said it. It's going to eventually happen, and I think this is just going to be another bullet in the gun, so to speak, to push that issue where states like New York, California, Oregon, Washington, the hardline blue states are going to eventually either they're going to break away because they hate the United States so bad, or the red states are going to break away because they're tired of blue states dictating all of our lives based around what they believe. And so I don't know if it will necessarily be like a violent civil war. I think it's going to be more of a goods and services civil war, more so than a guns and shoot people in the face.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be red states are going to stop. They're going to stop exporting beef and services to blue states.
Hey,
and
don't
blue
worry,
states
the
are
blue states are all about the veganism, so they're fine.
yeah, and they're all about drinking their green tea and herbal extracts and all that.
Right.
They can have that. I'll eat a steak and baked potatoes.
All about that cocaine.
Okay.
And I think that's what they're gonna do.
Yeah. All right. So I'm just gonna this is on the screen, of course, that I'm screen sharing with you guys. This is an article that was just posted by Nancy Pelosi's cardinal, actually, Mr.
That's right.
Salvatore J. Cordileone.
Cordileone. He sounds like he's from the Godfather.
Exactly. So he had a really interesting article in First Things, and First Things has actually really been something that's important to my family, because my grandmother, my Oma, since the time that she came to the United States, she was a pro-life advocate. She always was throughout her entire time. I think she wrote a couple articles from two First Things in support of the pro-life work. And unfortunately, she died in early 2020. And so she worked most of her adult life to overturn Roe and to fight for the unborn in the United States, and of course here in Canada when she moved here. But she did not live to see it overcome. And so I kind of felt it fitting that I would finish off this session just reading off something from First Things that kind of details a way that we can move forward. So I'm just going to read this last chunk. For 50 years, pro-life advocates have done the hard work of keeping the nation's conscience alive. We protested, prayed in front of clinics. We sustained crisis pregnancy centers to help women choose life. We conducted healing retreats for women and men suffering the after effects of abortion. We founded journals like the Human Life Review to make the intellectual case. Many worked in the legal field to make the principled case for overturning Roe v. Wade. Others strove to form and select judges who would respect and not pervert the national commitment to the inalienable right to life. Those called to politics worked to elect presidents and senators who would confirm such judges to the Supreme Court. Today we persevered, and today it is hard not to feel like we triumphed. But in the truth, the overthrow of Roe is not the final triumph, but the beginning of a new and harder road ahead. Our goal is not to create a culture where abortion is illegal, but where it is unthinkable. To do that requires sacrificial love for both mother and child. There will be protests and threats and tumult. I ask you not to back down, but to redouble your commitment. Most of all, I ask you to pray, because without God, we can do nothing. And then get to work. Call up your local pregnancy center and commit to a monthly donation. Support political leaders who not only restrict abortion, but provide new resources for mothers in crisis. Volunteer to accompany single mothers, not only during pregnancy, but also beyond. Fast one day a week and donate money you can to Catholic charities, and of course to other pro-life charities, or other organizations that provide for mothers in need. And men, answer the call to be a father for the fatherless. On Friday, the Supreme Court reversed a half-century of discrimination against the weakest and most vulnerable amongst us. We are now free at last to work for a culture of life and love for every human being. Let's start today.
Those Catholics are based.
They are indeed. They are indeed. I saw that because I have a friend of mine who's also in the pro-life movement here in Calgary by the name of Victor. And he posted that, and I'm like, dude, I want to use this on the show because this is so good. It is so well put. And it details a lot of what the progress needs to be made and how we can move forward in advancing the pro-life cause. And I know we have a lot of work to do. You guys have a lot less than we do, and we celebrate your victory with you. But the job's not done. And for those who believe, like we strive for the day when we come home and say, well done. Or somebody else, when God says, well done. Because we've been fighting, we fought for what is right, we fought for what is true, and we fought for the innocent. And I won't stop fighting. Here in Canada, we're going to keep fighting. We got to start the fight, basically. But there's a lot of left to be done. And that's basically where we're going to finish off tonight. It's been over 2 hours.
Steven, you're so poetic tonight.
I have my moments.
Right here, I'm like, man, where's the Kleenex, man?
All right. So we thank both of our guests. You guys have been truly wonderful. The conversations that we've had tonight were meaningful. They were encouraging. They were funny. So thank you, Elijah. Thank you, Johnny. For those who have been watching, those who've been commenting, thanks for participating. We'll be back for another live stream on Thursday, which is the usual time we do live streams. But on Thursday, we're going to have another one. This one's not going to be on Discord. This is not going to have the screens. It's going to be one screen. There's going to be 3 of us. It's going to be Danny, me, and an intern from one of the big pro-life organizations here in Canada. His name is Josh. He's a good friend of ours. And he interns for the Canadian Centre for Bioethical Reform. And we're going to go through memes. We're going to go through pro-aborty memes. And we're going to address them and debunk them. And it'll be fun. It'll be a good night.
Go meme hunting.
Yeah, and then to finish off our pro-life stuff, next week, July the 7th, is going to be hopefully our big night. We're going to have Canadian pro-life leaders. We already have Cameron Cote from the Canadian Centre for Bioethical Reform. We have Jojo Ruba, formerly from Faith Beyond Belief. He founded the Canadian Centre for Bioethical Reform. We're trying to see if we can get someone from We Need a Law. And I'm in communication with Laura Clausen. Haven't gotten a confirmation from her yet, but we're hoping, fingers crossed, because she is awesome. I love Laura so much. She's a personal hero of mine, and I've only met her once.
Got a little crush on her.
It's a pro-life crush. I still love my wife.
Hair.
It must be the pink hair. All right. So, thank you to everybody. We'll see you on Thursday. Danny, sign us out.
See ya.
No, that's not
No, I'm just giving you a hard time.
You schmuck.
So easy to trigger this guy. These pro-lifers are so easily triggered.
He's not even pointing in the right direction.
Anyways, hey, I'm Danny. I'm one of the amazing Shrewd dudes, and we always remind you, why be rude and you can be shrewd. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Feel free to join us anytime on a live stream. Share your content if you like it. Thanks, thanks, boys. Thanks, Elijah. Thanks, you, John. You guys are awesome.
Yep. All right. See everybody Thursday.